Why would a book mentioned in the Bible itself be erased from history? What was so dangerous about the Book of Jasher? Could this forgotten text hold the key to secrets that, if known, could shake the very foundations of faith, history, and power? As we move through the complexities of modern life, we often encounter whispers of hidden truths, mysteries of history, suppressed knowledge, and forgotten secrets. These lost truths are not just relics of a distant past, but living pieces of our world today, shaping our lives in ways we may not even realize. In an age where information is at our fingertips, one might ask, why do we still encounter gaps in our knowledge? Why are certain books, documents, and stories deliberately kept from public view? And more importantly, what are the consequences of ignoring or erasing them? Throughout history, there have been instances where information was hidden or manipulated. The mystery behind the Book of Jasher is just one of many examples where history seems to have been carefully curated, leaving certain pieces of the puzzle out of reach. If you've ever wondered why some truths are left unsaid, why certain texts disappear from the annals of time, you're not alone. In this documentary, we'll explore the mystery surrounding the Book of Jasher, a book that was once part of the biblical tradition, mentioned in the scriptures, yet largely erased from the historical and theological narrative. The Book of Jasher is mentioned twice in the Bible, once in the Old Testament, Joshua 10:13, and again in 2 Samuel 1:18. Both references give the impression that this book was not only known but revered. Joshua, in the midst of battle, commands that the sun stand still as it is written in the Book of Jasher, hinting that it was a source of ancient knowledge, perhaps sacred and authoritative. So why was it excluded from the Bible? Why was it banned? The Book of Jasher presents itself as an ancient account of early biblical history, from the creation of the world to the reigns of the patriarchs and kings. According to the tradition, it fills in many gaps in the canonical Bible, offering deeper, more detailed narratives about figures like Adam, Noah, Abraham, and Moses. Stories that aren't found in the familiar texts we read today. But why? If it was once part of the biblical tradition, did it fade from the public consciousness, becoming more of a legend than a reality? Was its content too controversial, too revealing? Or was it suppressed for political and theological reasons? To understand why the Book of Jasher was banned, we must delve into the dynamics of power and control throughout history. The relationship between religion and politics is one of complex intersection and, often, deep secrecy. In the ancient world, just as in today's society, control over information equated to control over the people. Imagine for a moment a book that could challenge the established religious order, offering a version of history that might contradict or complicate the official narrative. It's no wonder that such a text could be suppressed, its teachings hidden from the masses. In modern society, we continue to grapple with similar issues of hidden knowledge, conspiracies, and the suppression of ideas. We live in an age of information, but the digital age has also brought about new forms of control and censorship. We see it in the way history is taught, in the way media shapes public perception, and in the way certain narratives dominate the conversation while others are silenced. Whether it's the deliberate omission of inconvenient facts, the manipulation of events to serve political agendas, or the outright censorship of opposing viewpoints, history is still being shaped by those in power. So, the question we must ask is, what truths are we still being kept from today? This is where the Book of Jasher comes in. Its disappearance from the historical and theological records suggests that it was more than just a book. It was a potential threat. A threat to established religious dogma, a challenge to the narratives that were being constructed to keep certain powers intact. And while the book itself may be lost to history, its impact, its echoes, continue to stir curiosity. In this journey, you'll learn not just about the Book of Jasher, but about the broader forces that have shaped the history of the Bible, the influence of suppressed knowledge, and the importance of understanding the full scope of our spiritual and historical heritage. What if the Book of Jasher holds the answers to some of the questions we still ask today? What truths could we uncover if we dared to examine the texts and narratives we've long forgotten or overlooked? Through this exploration, you'll gain a deeper understanding of the powerful forces that shape the religious landscape, not just in ancient times, but in our present day. You'll learn about the complex web of political, theological, and cultural dynamics that influence what we know and what we don't know. The Book of Jasher is just one piece of this puzzle, but it is a piece that could help us unlock much more about the past and perhaps about ourselves. This is not just a journey into ancient history, but a call to examine the ways in which history, our history, is still being written. In uncovering the Book of Jasher, we may discover not only lost stories, but also lost truths that have shaped our world in ways we have yet to fully understand. The Book of Jasher is mentioned twice in the Bible, and those mentions open the door to a mystery that has captivated scholars and historians for centuries. The first reference appears in Joshua 10:13, during the dramatic moment when Joshua, leading the Israelites in battle, prays for the sun to stand still. The verse says, "And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies." But here's the twist. The passage continues, "As it is written in the Book of Jasher." So what exactly is this book? What did it say about this miraculous event? Why, of all things, was it mentioned in connection to such a powerful moment in history? The very mention of the Book of Jasher in this context suggests that it was a record of Israel's most significant events. It's almost as though the writers were saying, you want to understand the full scope of what happened. Look in the Book of Jasher. This book, it seems, was not just a simple chronicle of history, but a work that held the keys to understanding the divine workings in Israel's battle for survival. What could it have said about this moment when God's power extended the day, giving Joshua and his army the time they needed to secure victory? Then the Book of Jasher is mentioned again in 2 Samuel 1:18, after the tragic deaths of King Saul and his son Jonathan. In this verse, we read about David commanding that the Book of Jasher be used to record his lament for Saul and Jonathan. He ordered that the people of Judah be taught this lament of the bow, it says, referring to the song David composed to mourn the loss of the king and his son. This second mention not only connects the Book of Jasher with significant historical events, but also suggests that the book was used as a record of Israel's history, one that preserved not just dry facts, but the deep emotional and spiritual truths behind those events. The song of mourning for Saul and Jonathan wasn't just about remembering their deaths. It was about preserving the spiritual and cultural legacy of Israel. Why would the Book of Jasher be referenced in these key moments? It wasn't some obscure text. The mere fact that both Joshua and David, two of the most pivotal figures in the Bible, turned to the Book of Jasher implies that it held significant authority. It may have been a record of divine intervention, chronicling God's mighty acts in Israel's history. It was likely seen as a text that was connected not just to historical events, but to the very heart of Israel's spiritual identity. If these events were indeed written down in the Book of Jasher, it would mean that this text provided an alternative view, or at least a more detailed account, of what transpired. It might have offered deeper insights into the battles, the divine promises, and the emotions that define these pivotal moments. But here's where the mystery deepens. Despite its clear importance, we have no copy of the Book of Jasher today. What happened to it? How did a book mentioned in the Bible vanish from history? Were its contents too controversial, too dangerous for those in power? Or was it simply lost to time? its stories fading away with no one to preserve them. These biblical references leave us with more questions than answers. But one thing is clear. The Book of Jasher was no ordinary text. It was something that could unlock deeper layers of the biblical narrative, shedding light on the miraculous and the human side of Israel's journey. The mystery surrounding its contents has only made it all the more intriguing. Why was it mentioned in these two crucial biblical moments? What secrets might it hold? And why was it lost to history? The Book of Jasher is more than just a forgotten text from the distant past. Based on its biblical mentions, we can only imagine what it may have once held, lost to time, perhaps intentionally, or simply forgotten. Yet the speculation surrounding its original purpose and historical value gives us fascinating insights into how ancient texts might have functioned within the larger framework of Israel's religious and cultural history. One of the primary functions the Book of Jasher may have served was that of a historical document, meticulously chronicling key events in Israel's early days. When we read Joshua's command to refer to the Book of Jasher during the miraculous event of the sun standing still, it suggests that the book was seen as a credible and authoritative source, recording the events of Israel's battle and God's intervention. Imagine this. The Book of Jasher might have been a detailed history, much more expansive than the brief mentions we have in the canonical texts, offering a comprehensive account of the battles, alliances, and divine acts that shaped the nation of Israel. But what if the Book of Jasher was more than just a historical text? The idea that it might have also served as a literary work is intriguing. It's easy to envision it as a collection of stories, songs, and poems. After all, 2 Samuel 1:18 tells us that the Book of Jasher was used to record David's mournful lament for Saul and Jonathan. Why would a historical text be used to record such a deeply emotional and poetic tribute, unless the book had a literary function as well? In ancient Israel, poetry and song were often used to commemorate victories, losses, and moments of spiritual significance. Perhaps the Book of Jasher was not just a dry record of events, but a living, breathing document, capturing the heart and soul of Israel's history through vivid, emotional storytelling. Speculation also runs deep about what other stories the Book of Jasher may have contained, stories that we only glimpse in the canonical Bible or hear about through whispers in ancient traditions. What if it offered expanded narratives about figures like Abraham, Moses, or Noah? We know these figures are central to the biblical narrative, but their stories in the Bible are often brief, with gaps that leave us wondering about their personal struggles, victories, and relationships. The Book of Jasher might have filled in those blanks, providing us with a deeper, more complex picture of these iconic characters. For example, we could imagine the Book of Jasher providing a more intimate portrayal of Abraham's journey of faith, or Moses' internal conflict as he faced Pharaoh's resistance. Perhaps Noah's trials leading up to the flood were told in greater detail, offering insights into his character and motivations, which the Bible only hints at. Moreover, it's possible that the Book of Jasher offered a fuller, richer account of the events surrounding the patriarchs and matriarchs, figures like Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, and others. These characters often play background roles in the canonical scriptures, but they too would have had compelling stories of their own that might have been immortalized in the Book of Jasher. What were their personal experiences, their inner struggles? What were their moments of faith and doubt? Could these voices have been preserved in a poetic and narrative form? In this sense, the Book of Jasher could have been a blend of both history and artistic expression, capturing the deeds of Israel's ancestors and the divine interventions that shaped their lives. The fact that it may have served both as a historical document and a work of literature would have made it an invaluable resource for the people of Israel, offering both knowledge of their past and a deep connection to the emotional and spiritual lives of their forebears. But there's another layer to consider. Why, if the Book of Jasher was so integral to Israel's history and culture, do we not have it today? The answer likely lies in the power dynamics of ancient Israel and the early Christian church. As we'll explore later, the Book of Jasher may have contained narratives and perspectives that didn't align with the theological agenda of the early church, or it might have been deemed politically inconvenient for those in power. This raises the question: was the Book of Jasher deliberately suppressed to remove an alternative history, or was it simply lost over time, like many other ancient texts? The original purpose and value of the Book of Jasher remain a mystery, but the possibilities it presents are endless. Whether it was a historical record, a literary treasure, or both, it undoubtedly had the power to offer a deeper, more complex understanding of the early days of Israel and its key figures. The loss of this book is not just a loss of words on a page. It's a loss of a vital piece of Israel's spiritual and cultural legacy. If only we could recover it, perhaps we'd find that the Book of Jasher was not just a record of the past, but a living document that spoke to the hearts of those who read it, much as the Bible itself continues to do today. To understand the Book of Jasher's origins, we must consider the time period in which it was likely written and how it may have been transmitted. The most common speculation places the creation of the Book of Jasher sometime after the events it chronicles, possibly during the reign of King David or the early days of the Israelite monarchy. It is also plausible that the book was written by an unknown author or group of authors who were deeply embedded in the historical events of the time. If we take the references in Joshua and Samuel at face value, the Book of Jasher was likely written during a period when oral traditions were still strong, and the stories of Israel's early history had not yet been fully compiled into the books we recognize today as the Old Testament. These stories would have been passed down orally for generations before being committed to writing. The Book of Jasher could have been preserved by a specific group of scribes, religious leaders, or historians who were dedicated to maintaining Israel's historical and spiritual record. Over time, as Israel's religious canon became more formalized and organized, it is possible that the Book of Jasher was lost or deliberately excluded from the official record. The suppression of texts, like the Book of Jasher, is a recurring theme in the history of ancient scriptures, where certain works were viewed as contradictory to the established religious or political narrative. Given that we have no original manuscripts of the Book of Jasher, it is likely that any copies that existed were either destroyed, lost, or deliberately removed from circulation. What we do have today are later versions, such as the one published in the 18th century, which purports to be a version of the original book. However, these later versions have been widely debated, as they do not match the descriptions of the Book of Jasher found in the biblical texts. They may be attempts to reconstruct the text from memory or from fragments, but the authenticity of these versions remains uncertain. The suppression of the Book of Jasher can be traced back to a series of political and theological decisions made during the formation of the Christian canon. Decisions that were not just about what was spiritually accurate, but also about what would secure the church's power and influence. At the heart of these decisions lies the Council of Nicaea, convened in 325 AD, where Christian leaders gathered to establish the foundational doctrines of the emerging church. The council's influence cannot be overstated. It determined what would be included in the Bible and, just as importantly, what would be left out. One of the central aims of the Council of Nicaea was to create theological uniformity within the Christian faith. With Christianity growing rapidly across the Roman Empire, there were countless varying interpretations of Scripture and belief. Different Christian communities held different ideas about the nature of Christ, the structure of the church, and the interpretation of sacred texts. In an attempt to standardize belief, the council sought to establish a cohesive, universally accepted version of the Christian doctrine, a doctrine that could unite the empire under one religious framework. The Book of Jasher, with its alternative versions of key biblical stories, could have been seen as a threat to that unity. Imagine the scene at the Council of Nicaea. Powerful bishops, theologians, and emperors gathered to debate the very nature of the Christian faith. They weren't just concerned with spiritual truth, they were also concerned with maintaining control. Christianity, now the state religion of the Roman Empire, was at the crossroads of power. A fractured or divided church would undermine the authority of the emperor and the leadership of the bishops. Texts like the Book of Jasher, which offered additional details or even diverging interpretations of biblical events, could have challenged the very narrative that the church was trying to solidify. The Book of Jasher might have painted a picture of biblical history that didn't align with the doctrine the council wanted to promote. The inclusion of certain texts in the Christian canon was thus not only about spiritual relevance, but also about political strategy. By excluding texts that didn't fit the new narrative, the church ensured that the theological ideas it wanted to promote would dominate. These texts, including the Book of Jasher, could have threatened the unity of the doctrine that was being crafted. A book that provided a more detailed or alternative version of stories like the creation of the world, the story of Noah, or the life of Moses, could cause division. What the early church leaders needed was a unified message that could rally the faithful around a single interpretation of Scripture. Additionally, the removal of the Book of Jasher could have been an effort to control religious authority. Church leaders at the time had to ensure that they held the keys to spiritual truth, and that power was solidified by controlling which texts were considered sacred. If the Book of Jasher offered conflicting accounts of biblical events, it might have undermined the church's narrative and the legitimacy of its leaders. It was more than just theological. It was a power struggle, one in which those in charge wanted to be the sole arbiters of truth. In the broader context of religious history, this was not an isolated event. Throughout the formation of the biblical canon, many other texts were excluded, suppressed, or destroyed because they didn't align with the newly established orthodoxy. The Gnostic Gospels, for example, were similarly left out for their unorthodox views of Christ's nature and the role of women in the early church. The Book of Jasher was just another casualty of the church's desire for unity and control. The decision to suppress the Book of Jasher also had lasting consequences. By removing it from the canon, the early church effectively erased a significant portion of biblical history from public consciousness. The events and characters that the book may have illuminated were obscured, and the stories it told were lost to future generations. And yet, the very fact that the Book of Jasher continues to be referenced in the Bible, though it is absent from the canonical texts, ensures its place in religious history. It serves as a reminder that even the most powerful institutions can't fully erase the truth, and the whispers of lost stories continue to echo through time, waiting to be uncovered. The story of Noah and the flood, as recounted in the Book of Jasher, presents a much richer and more detailed narrative than the version found in Genesis. In Jasher, the account of Noah's life and the events leading up to the flood are laid out with significant emphasis on the world's moral decay, highlighting a humanity that had spiraled beyond hope. The people of Noah's time had not simply sinned, but had descended into utter corruption, committing violence, idolatry, and every form of wickedness imaginable. It wasn't just an age of sin. It was a time where the very foundations of morality had been shattered, and God's patience had worn thin. This setting forms the backdrop of Noah's story. In the Book of Jasher, Noah isn't just the lone righteous man that God chooses to save. He is a figure of profound compassion and sorrow. The people of his day have crossed every line imaginable, but Noah, despite knowing the flood is coming, still feels the weight of their choices. His role as a preacher of righteousness is not one of condemnation, but of sorrowful plea. He doesn't stand as a superior figure. He stands as a compassionate man trying to warn the people, desperate to see them change their ways. But despite his tireless efforts, the people mock him. They laugh at him, scoffing at his warnings and the idea of a flood that will wipe them from the earth. As Noah builds the ark, the emotional weight of the situation becomes clear. In Genesis, the focus is on the command from God and the obedience of Noah. But in Jasher, the story dives deeper into Noah's personal struggles. He faces constant ridicule, his labor mocked by those around him. The ridicule isn't just from strangers, it's from those he knows. His family, too, seems uncertain. In Jasher, the tension between Noah and his sons is palpable. They help him build the ark, but they do so with hesitation, unsure of the vision their father is carrying out. The sons are reluctant, questioning the divine message Noah has received, struggling to believe in something they cannot see. The emotional complexity of Noah's relationship with his sons adds a human dimension to the story. It's not just a man following God's command. It's a father trying to convey something unfathomable to his children, something they cannot comprehend. The construction of the ark in Jasher is not just a physical task. It becomes a symbol of Noah's faith. Each timber, each plank, represents a step toward salvation. Yet Noah's heart remains heavy with the knowledge of the destruction that looms over the world. His sons' doubt and fear weigh on him, and the tension between them becomes a powerful narrative thread. This is a family torn between belief and doubt, struggling with the enormity of the divine message they are asked to embrace. As the floodwaters begin to rise, the panic of humanity is palpable in Jasher's account. The chaos of the moment is described in vivid detail. People who had mocked Noah now scramble to find safety. The sky darkens, the first drops of rain fall, and the floodwaters begin to rise. In the face of certain death, the people who once laughed at Noah's warnings now realize the terrifying reality of their situation. But it is too late. Their cries for mercy go unanswered. There is no second chance. The window for repentance has closed. In Jasher, the flood isn't just a flood. It's a final opportunity that humanity tragically misses. The world, once filled with pride and arrogance, is now overcome with the realization of their doom. The flood itself becomes more than just an act of divine punishment. It's the tragic culmination of humanity's refusal to change, to heed the warnings given by Noah. The theological implications in Jasher's account are profound. The ark isn't just a vessel of salvation. It's a powerful symbol of God's enduring grace, offered in the face of judgment. In Jasher, the ark represents not just safety for Noah and his family, but a sign of God's mercy and patience. It is a reminder that God, even in his wrath, provides a way for redemption. However, the overwhelming tragedy of the story is that humanity did not take that opportunity. The flood serves as both an act of destruction and a chance for redemption that is ultimately squandered. This deeper focus on the human side of the story makes Jasher's account resonate on an emotional level. It's not just a story of divine judgment. It's a story of missed opportunity. The flood is not merely a punishment. It's a reflection of what happens when people choose to ignore God's mercy and warnings. The tension between Noah's compassion and humanity's rejection of it creates an emotional complexity that goes beyond the physical aspects of the story. Jasher's Noah is a man who, despite being divinely chosen to survive, feels the weight of his society's destruction. He is not untouched by the sorrow of it all. This added emotional layer enriches the traditional narrative, bringing it closer to human experience. The Noah of Jasher is not just a figure of obedience, but a man torn by the knowledge of what's coming, yet resolute in his mission. The story of Abraham's near sacrifice of Isaac, as recounted in the Book of Jasher, is far richer and more emotionally nuanced than the version we read in Genesis. While the Genesis account briefly touches on the divine command and Abraham's obedience, Jasher delves into the complex psychological and emotional turmoil that Abraham must have experienced when faced with such a monumental test of faith. In Jasher, the command to sacrifice Isaac is not a sudden, isolated event, but part of a long series of tests that Abraham has endured throughout his life, reinforcing the idea that his relationship with God was continually challenged and strengthened. Jasher opens with a moment of deep introspection for Abraham. This is not a man simply following orders. This is a father who has spent decades nurturing and loving his son, Isaac, and now faces the heart-wrenching reality of potentially losing him. The divine command comes, but it is not without inner conflict. The emotional weight of what is being asked of him is palpable. Abraham, in his own mind, wrestles with his faith and the seemingly impossible nature of the task. He understands the magnitude of the test, and yet, as a father, the thought of sacrificing his own flesh and blood is nearly unbearable. Jasher expands on this inner conflict, showing Abraham as a man who is not immune to doubt, fear, and anguish, but who ultimately submits to God's will because of his unwavering faith. The story in Jasher also places a strong emphasis on the relationship between Abraham and Sarah, Isaac's mother. When Abraham reveals the divine command to Sarah, her reaction is one of profound shock and sorrow. In Genesis, Sarah's role is largely passive, but Jasher brings her voice and emotional turmoil into sharper focus. She is devastated by the thought of losing Isaac, the son she had waited for so long, and her distress is raw and real. Abraham tries to comfort her, explaining that this test is part of God's plan. But Sarah, torn between her maternal instincts and her love for her husband, is unable to come to terms with the decision. This moment between the couple offers a deeper exploration of the complexities of faith and family, showing how even the most devout individuals experience the human struggle of reconciling divine will with personal sacrifice. Jasher also gives us a unique perspective on Isaac himself. While Genesis paints Isaac as relatively passive during the sacrifice, Jasher paints him as an active participant in the divine plan. Isaac, though he does not protest, is not unaware of what is happening. The book emphasizes that Isaac understands the weight of his father's obedience to God, and it is his own trust in Abraham's faith that allows him to quietly submit to the sacrifice. There is a beautiful moment in Jasher where Isaac's own faith shines through, not just in God, but in his father. Isaac, seeing the unwavering devotion in Abraham's eyes, understands that this is part of a higher purpose, and he is willing to endure the ultimate test of faith, not with fear, but with quiet trust. His submission is not out of helplessness, but out of a profound understanding of his father's relationship with God and his place in God's divine plan. The emotional and spiritual intensity of the moment is brought to a head in Jasher's retelling of the climax. As Abraham raises the knife to sacrifice Isaac, the internal struggle within him is more fully explored. Jasher paints this as the most excruciating moment of Abraham's life, torn between his love for his son and his obedience to God. The act of lifting the knife is not done lightly. It is done with a heart torn in two, a father's love battling against a man's devotion to the divine. This added complexity makes the narrative much more relatable and human. It is a moment of extreme tension, where the bond between father and son is pushed to its absolute limit. Then, as in Genesis, God intervenes at the last moment. In Jasher, however, the intervention feels even more profound. The voice of God calls out, stopping Abraham just as the knife is about to fall, and the angel reveals a ram caught in the thicket to be used as a sacrifice in Isaac's place. This moment of divine mercy is not just about sparing Isaac's life. It is a moment of grace that reveals the true nature of God's love and sacrifice. The ram is not merely a substitute, but a powerful symbol of God's ultimate sacrifice on behalf of humanity. Just as the ram takes Isaac's place, so too does God provide his own sacrifice for the redemption of mankind. In this light, the ram is seen not just as a provision for Abraham, but as a foreshadowing of a much greater sacrifice to come. Jasher's narrative deepens the spiritual significance of this moment, showing how Abraham's faithfulness, despite the overwhelming emotional and spiritual turmoil, leads to a deeper understanding of God's mercy and providence. In this retelling, the sacrifice of Isaac becomes not just a test of obedience, but a profound revelation of divine love. Abraham's willingness to offer his son becomes a reflection of God's willingness to sacrifice his own son for the salvation of the world. Ultimately, the story in Jasher presents Abraham not just as a man of great faith, but as a man deeply human, struggling with the same emotions, doubts, and fears that we all face. His journey is one of deep inner conflict as he reconciles the demands of faith with the love of his family. His willingness to follow God's command, even at the greatest personal cost, serves as an enduring example of trust and devotion. And in the divine intervention that provides the ram, we see a glimpse of the greater divine plan, a plan that would one day require the ultimate sacrifice for the redemption of humanity. Through this deeply emotional and spiritual retelling, the Book of Jasher brings the story of Abraham and Isaac to life in a way that resonates on a much deeper level, emphasizing the human and divine aspects of the narrative and making it a timeless testament to faith, obedience, and God's mercy. The Battle of Gibeon, where Joshua commands the sun to stand still, is one of the most dramatic and awe-inspiring moments in the Book of Jasher. While the biblical account in Joshua 10 gives us a glimpse of this extraordinary event, Jasher's retelling provides far more vivid imagery and emotional depth, elevating it to a moment of unparalleled divine intervention. The armies of Israel are locked in a fierce struggle against the Amorites, and in the heat of battle, Joshua, filled with divine inspiration, utters a command that will forever change the course of the battle, and perhaps history itself. In Jasher, Joshua's request to God is not a simple, desperate plea. It is a bold, faith-filled declaration. He calls upon the Lord not just to give them the victory, but to extend the day, to allow the sun to halt its motion so that the Israelites can finish their task and defeat the enemies of Israel. The retelling in Jasher highlights Joshua's faith in God's power, showing how, in that moment, he places all his trust in the Almighty's ability to do the impossible. Joshua's command is depicted with dramatic flair, emphasizing the sheer audacity of the request. After all, to ask for the sun to stand still is not just asking for a delay. It's asking for God to change the natural order of the universe. The miracle itself is described in much greater detail in Jasher. As Joshua speaks those powerful words, "Sun, stand still upon Gibeon," the earth seems to shudder and the heavens respond. The sun, without hesitation, obeys Joshua's command, and the sky itself undergoes a change. The colors shift in a strange and almost unnatural way, as if the world itself is holding its breath. The earth ceases its rotation, and for a moment, time itself is suspended. The warriors fighting on the battlefield experience the effects of this unnatural event. The heat of the sun seems to intensify as the hours stretch on, but there is a strange sense of awe in the air. The soldiers, though they fight with fierce determination, are keenly aware of the divine hand at work, and the miracle only strengthens their resolve. Jasher's account deepens the emotional weight of the event. The fear and wonder felt by the Israelites are palpable. They see the sky darken, then lighten again in eerie silence, as though the world itself is in shock. For those on the battlefield, it feels like they've crossed into a different realm, where the usual rules of nature no longer apply. There's a sense that they are part of something much larger than themselves, something divine. The urgency of the battle increases as the Israelites know that they have been given this extended moment, a divine gift to win. This emotional weight makes the scene more immersive, drawing the reader into the experience of these warriors who are not only fighting for survival, but fighting with the very forces of nature behind them. What's striking in Jasher is how the miracle is not just about the extension of daylight, but the very suspension of time itself. The soldiers fight well into the night, knowing that with the light still shining, their victory is all but assured. This isn't merely a matter of having extra time, it's a sign of divine favor and intervention. The sense of power and control that Joshua must have felt, commanding the sun to remain in the sky, is magnified by the miraculous display that follows. As the battle continues, the men of Israel fight with renewed vigor, encouraged by the signs that God is present and working on their behalf. In addition to the sun, Jasher also expands the account to include the moon, which is said to have stopped in its course, further emphasizing the celestial intervention. The idea that both the sun and the moon are suspended in the sky is a remarkable detail that reinforces the miraculous nature of the event. In this retelling, the heavenly bodies themselves seem to bear witness to God's will, with the sun and the moon stopping in their paths as Israel's enemies are defeated. This dual intervention is a powerful symbol of God's control over all aspects of creation, not just the natural world, but the cosmos itself. Jasher adds a theological layer to this story, exploring the miracle's significance beyond the victory itself. The miracle of the sun standing still is not just a spectacle for the Israelites, it is a profound statement about God's power over time and nature. In the Book of Jasher, the sun's delay serves as a testament to the sovereignty of God, showing that the Creator is not bound by the limits of time, space, or natural law. God's ability to intervene in the course of history, even to the point of altering the fundamental structure of the universe, illustrates that nothing is beyond His control. For the Israelites, this miracle becomes a visible manifestation of God's covenant with them, a sign that He is with them, fighting their battles and ensuring their victory. The long day is presented as more than just a moment of divine intervention. It is a symbol of God's active role in Israel's triumph. The battle is not won through human strength alone, but through God's will, guiding and sustaining the Israelites in their struggle. This theme of divine sovereignty is underscored by the way the Israelites acknowledge the miracle. As the sun finally sets, they are filled with awe and reverence, realizing that their victory was not solely due to their own efforts, but to God's direct involvement in their lives. The long day becomes not just a victory on the battlefield, but a moment in which the Israelites are reminded of the power and presence of God in their midst. Joshua's leadership is also affirmed in this moment. In Jasher, he is portrayed not only as a military commander, but as a servant of divine will. His faith in God and his willingness to step forward and ask for the impossible are central to his role as a leader. The miracle reinforces the idea that Joshua's leadership is not about personal strength, but about his trust in God's guidance. This moment becomes a defining point in Joshua's journey, a testimony to his unwavering faith and the fulfillment of God's promises to Israel. The dramatic retelling of the Battle of Gibeon and the sun standing still in Jasher elevates this biblical event from a simple historical moment to a profound spiritual experience. It is a story that highlights divine intervention, the power of faith, and the sovereignty of God over creation. In the Book of Jasher, the miracle of the sun standing still becomes not just a moment of victory, but a sign that God is always present in the battles of life, guiding his people to victory against overwhelming odds. The Book of Jasher presents a fascinating yet controversial layer to biblical theology, offering narratives that diverge from or expand upon the canonical Bible. These deviations challenge conventional interpretations of foundational events and provoke deeper reflection on the complexities of faith. Jasher's treatment of biblical patriarchs, for instance, highlights their humanity, exposing their flaws, fears, and inner struggles in a way that makes them profoundly relatable. Take Abraham, for example. In the Genesis account, he is often celebrated as the epitome of unwavering faith. Yet in Jasher, Abraham is depicted wrestling emotionally with God's demands, particularly during the near sacrifice of Isaac. This portrayal shifts the narrative from a straightforward tale of obedience to a deeply introspective exploration of faith under pressure. Abraham's inner dialogue reveals his anguish, doubt, and eventual resolve, painting a picture of a man deeply conflicted yet steadfast in his commitment to God. It's a portrayal that resonates with readers who have grappled with their own spiritual uncertainties. Similarly, Noah's story gains emotional depth in Jasher's account. Beyond the grandeur of constructing the ark and the looming flood, Jasher emphasizes Noah's personal struggles. The strained relationship with his sons, who initially question his divine mission, adds a layer of familial tension that feels strikingly modern. Noah is no longer just a preacher of righteousness. He is a father, a leader, and a man trying to fulfill a monumental task in the face of widespread mockery and doubt. These additions to the narrative make Noah's journey more than a tale of obedience. It becomes a story of perseverance and the cost of faith. Even celebrated victories in the Bible take on a more nuanced tone in Jasher. Joshua's iconic battle with the Amorites, where he commands the sun to stand still, is imbued with emotional complexity. In this retelling, Joshua experiences moments of self-doubt and questions his ability to lead. It's only through his reliance on God's power that he summons the courage to demand the miraculous. These added layers emphasize that even the strongest leaders are human, subject to the same fears and insecurities as anyone else. This reframing invites readers to see faith as a journey marked by vulnerability rather than an unbroken display of strength. Such portrayals, while deeply humanizing, raise theological questions. Critics argue that Jasher risks undermining the Bible's authority by presenting alternate versions of familiar stories. By highlighting the struggles and imperfections of revered figures, does it diminish their spiritual legacy? Or does it instead offer a more authentic representation of their journeys? Supporters of Jasher's narrative suggest that its insights enrich rather than dilute the biblical message. They contend that by portraying patriarchs as flawed yet faithful, the text makes their stories more accessible to modern readers. These depictions bridge the gap between the ancient world and contemporary life, reminding us that even the greatest heroes of faith faced trials and doubts. Yet this humanization stirs controversy. Many traditional theological frameworks rely on the idealization of biblical figures to inspire steadfast faith. Jasher's nuanced portrayals, which blur the lines between divinely chosen individuals and their human frailties, challenge these ideals. By focusing on the internal struggles of characters like Abraham, Noah, and Joshua, Jasher shifts the narrative from one of divine perfection to one of relatable imperfection. In this tension lies the enduring appeal of Jasher. It forces readers to grapple with uncomfortable questions. Can faith coexist with doubt? Does human frailty diminish divine purpose, or does it enhance the beauty of God's grace? These challenges to theological norms ensure that the Book of Jasher continues to provoke debate and inspire reflection, offering a fresh lens through which to view the enduring stories of Scripture. The rediscovery of the Book of Jasher in the 18th century set the scholarly world ablaze with questions about its authenticity, origins, and significance. A manuscript surfaced in Venice in 1625, claiming to be the fabled Jasher referenced in the Bible. This text, translated into English in 1840, quickly became a topic of fascination and fierce debate. Was this truly the ancient record mentioned in Joshua and 2 Samuel, or a clever fabrication designed to exploit the public's appetite for biblical mysteries? From the outset, scholars found themselves divided. Supporters of the text's authenticity argued that its detailed accounts and alignment with biblical events suggested it could be an authentic historical document. They theorized that the Book of Jasher had been preserved through oral tradition, later committed to writing, and then lost for centuries until its rediscovery. These scholars pointed to the book's vivid expansions on biblical stories, such as its richly detailed retelling of the Tower of Babel and the days of Noah, as evidence of its historical significance. Critics, however, were far less convinced. They labeled Jasher a pseudepigraphal work, a text falsely attributed to an ancient author. They argued that its writing style and theological tone diverged from canonical scripture, suggesting that it was a later creation. Some went further, accusing the rediscovered text of being deliberately altered or fabricated to serve contemporary theological or political agendas. They speculated that the translators and publishers may have capitalized on public fascination with apocryphal writings to promote their own interpretations of Scripture. Adding to the controversy was the book's timing. The 18th and 19th centuries were marked by a surge of interest in lost biblical texts, fueled by discoveries like the Dead Sea Scrolls and other apocryphal writings. Critics wondered if Jasher's sudden emergence was too convenient, raising suspicions about its authenticity. Was it truly an ancient record, or simply a product of its time, tailored to quench the growing thirst for biblical revelations? Despite the skepticism, the Book of Jasher attracted a devoted following. Many readers were captivated by its ability to expand on familiar biblical stories, offering fresh perspectives and filling in gaps left by the canonical texts. For example, Jasher provides elaborate details about the construction of the Tower of Babel and the moral decay of humanity before the flood, offering a richer backdrop to these pivotal events. Proponents argued that even if Jasher was not the original text mentioned in Scripture, it remained a valuable historical and theological work that deepened understanding of biblical history. The debate over Jasher's authenticity persists in modern times. Scholars now employ advanced methods, such as textual analysis and linguistic studies, to trace the book's origins. Carbon dating has been suggested as a means of determining the age of surviving manuscripts, though the lack of original documents complicates these efforts. Some scholars maintain that the text reflects an authentic oral tradition, while others see it as an elaborate attempt to blend history and myth for dramatic effect. Yet the lack of a definitive conclusion has only amplified the intrigue surrounding the Book of Jasher. Its ambiguous origins and tantalizing narratives continue to provoke both academic inquiry and popular speculation. Whether viewed as a genuine relic of biblical history or an imaginative retelling, Jasher holds a unique place in the landscape of sacred texts. one that invites readers to explore the boundaries between faith, history, and the power of storytelling. This unresolved debate ensures that the Book of Jasher remains as much a mystery today as it was when it first reappeared centuries ago, a puzzle that challenges believers, historians, and skeptics alike to consider the ever-evolving nature of sacred literature. The Book of Jasher has become a magnet for modern conspiracy theories, with many speculating that its exclusion from the biblical canon and subsequent obscurity were deliberate acts to suppress hidden truths. These theories suggest that Jasher contains narratives too provocative or disruptive for established religious and political authorities to accept, making it a potential threat to the status quo. One prevalent theory centers around the early Christian church, particularly the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Advocates of this idea claim that church leaders intentionally excluded Jasher from the biblical canon to preserve orthodoxy. They argue that the book's portrayal of patriarchs as deeply flawed human figures and its alternative versions of key events could have encouraged critical thinking about the infallibility of Scripture. By sidelining Jasher, the church ensured greater control over theological interpretation, shaping a uniform narrative that aligned with its teachings. Another layer of speculation arises from the book's rediscovery in the 18th century. Some theorists believe that its reemergence was met with resistance from religious institutions determined to maintain their grip on the biblical narrative. Jasher's vivid accounts of pre-flood society, with descriptions of advanced knowledge, societal decay, and moral corruption, are seen by some as evidence of a suppressed history. These stories challenge traditional interpretations of early humanity, suggesting a complexity that doesn't neatly fit into established biblical timelines. In contemporary times, the Book of Jasher has found an unlikely following among fringe groups and alternative historians. They argue that Jasher holds secrets about humanity's origins and its relationship with the divine. Some claim the book hints at extraterrestrial involvement in ancient history, pointing to its mentions of angels, giants, and otherworldly beings. These theories, while often dismissed by mainstream scholars, have been amplified in popular media, including books, podcasts, and documentaries, fueling a growing mystique around the text. Though most of these suppression theories lack credible evidence, they tap into a universal fascination with the concept of hidden knowledge. Jasher's enigmatic content and mysterious origins make it a compelling symbol for those who feel that history has been sanitized or manipulated. For many, the idea that the book contains truths deliberately kept from the public adds to its allure, transforming it into a touchstone for debates about power, control, and the pursuit of knowledge. Whether the Book of Jasher is a relic of authentic history or a creative expansion of biblical tradition, it continues to provoke curiosity and controversy. Its story of rediscovery, rejection, and relentless speculation reflects humanity's enduring quest to uncover mysteries that challenge the boundaries of faith and reason. In this sense, Jasher remains more than a text. It is a window into the complexities of belief and the enduring desire to seek answers beyond the accepted narrative. The true reasons behind the Book of Jasher's suppression remain a subject of speculation, but several compelling hypotheses point to a mix of religious, political, and societal motives. At the heart of these theories is the idea that Jasher posed a direct challenge to the established order, both theological and institutional. One prominent hypothesis suggests that Jasher threatened the church's monopoly on scriptural interpretation. In the early centuries of Christianity, the church played a central role in determining which texts would form the biblical canon. The narratives in Jasher, with their raw and humanized portrayals of biblical figures, may have been perceived as undermining the divine authority traditionally ascribed to patriarchs like Abraham, Noah, and Joshua. By portraying these figures as flawed individuals wrestling with doubt, Jasher encouraged readers to question not only the perfection of biblical heroes, but also the infallibility of Scripture itself. Another possible motive for suppression was the book's capacity to incite doctrinal debates. Jasher's expanded narratives often diverge from canonical accounts, introducing theological challenges that were likely deemed too disruptive for the early church. For example, the book's detailed account of the pre-flood era paints a vivid picture of a highly advanced and morally corrupt society, raising questions about the nature of humanity and divine judgment. These elaborations could have sparked debates about free will, predestination, and the moral complexities of God's justice, issues the church might have sought to avoid during its formative years. Beyond theology, societal control may have played a role. The Book of Jasher delves into themes of rebellion, justice, and divine intervention, often presenting figures who challenge authority or question their circumstances. Such narratives could have been viewed as dangerous in times of political or religious upheaval, where maintaining order was paramount. Leaders may have feared that the book's stories could inspire dissent or empower individuals to question the legitimacy of earthly authorities, drawing parallels between divine justice and human governance. In more recent centuries, the suppression of Jasher could have stemmed from its potential to disrupt modern religious interpretations. The rediscovery of the text in the 18th century coincided with a period of religious reform and growing skepticism toward traditional institutions. Jasher's alternative perspectives on biblical events may have been seen as fueling doubts about the Bible's divine inspiration, threatening to destabilize the foundations of faith for many believers. One of the most controversial elements in Jasher that could have led to its suppression is its detailed account of the Tower of Babel. Unlike the relatively brief mention in Genesis, Jasher expands on the motives, ambitions, and ultimate downfall of humanity's attempt to build a tower reaching the heavens. In Jasher's account, the story of Babel becomes a cautionary tale about hubris, collective rebellion, and the misuse of knowledge. The text describes how humanity, united by a single language, sought to challenge divine authority by constructing a monument to their power and independence. What makes Jasher's version particularly striking is its emphasis on the sophistication of pre-flood technology and societal organization. It portrays the builders as not just disobedient, but also remarkably advanced, with knowledge that seems almost anachronistic for the era described. This expanded narrative raises provocative questions about the nature of human progress and its relationship with divine will. By suggesting that early humanity possessed advanced knowledge, possibly gifted or stolen from celestial beings, Jasher opens the door to speculative interpretations about the origins of civilization and the interplay between divine and human creation. Such ideas, if widely disseminated, could have been seen as undermining traditional theological views about the uniqueness of divine revelation and the timeline of human history. The climax of the Babel story, where God confounds humanity's language and scatters them across the earth, is also depicted with greater emotional and dramatic intensity in Jasher. The text describes the chaos, fear, and disillusionment that follow God's intervention, painting a vivid picture of divine justice in action. Yet it also hints at a deeper philosophical question: was humanity punished for their ambition or for their unity? This question strikes at the core of societal and theological debates. Unity is often celebrated as a virtue, yet Jasher's Babel narrative suggests that collective power, when wielded without humility, can lead to ruin. Such a theme could have been viewed as subversive, particularly in times when religious and political leaders sought to unify people under their authority. By challenging the narrative that unity is inherently good, Jasher may have been seen as sowing seeds of doubt about the legitimacy of centralized power, whether divine or human. The story of the Tower of Babel, as presented in Jasher, encapsulates the book's broader themes of human ambition, divine intervention, and the tension between progress and humility. It's a narrative that invites readers to question not only the actions of its characters, but also the larger moral and philosophical frameworks that govern their world. This capacity to provoke deep reflection and potentially challenge established beliefs may well be why Jasher was considered too dangerous for inclusion in the biblical canon. The Book of Jasher, whether interpreted as a genuine historical record, a pseudepigraphal text, or a creative piece of ancient storytelling, serves as a powerful reminder of the value of perspective in shaping our understanding of spiritual and moral truths. Its narratives challenge established conventions, offering alternative insights into well-known biblical stories. Jasher doesn't aim to replace or undermine the Bible. Rather, it seeks to complement it, enriching our understanding of the sacred through diversity of thought. At its core, Jasher calls for a broader lens in interpreting sacred texts. Its portrayals of figures like Abraham, Noah, and Joshua are not meant to diminish their greatness, but to humanize them, transforming them from distant icons of perfection into relatable individuals. This approach encourages modern readers to see faith not as a flawless journey, but as an ongoing process marked by doubt, struggle, and eventual growth, a narrative that deeply resonates in today's world, where personal and spiritual challenges are ever present. One of Jasher's most profound contributions is its depiction of biblical figures as multidimensional characters grappling with their humanity. Take Abraham, for example. In Genesis, he is celebrated as a paragon of faith, unwavering in his trust in God. Yet in Jasher, we see a man who questions, wrestles with his emotions, and agonizes over his decisions, especially in the near sacrifice of Isaac. This added layer of emotional complexity makes Abraham's faith even more inspiring, as it becomes clear that his obedience was not blind, but the result of profound internal struggle. Similarly, Noah's narrative in Jasher delves deeper into the interpersonal challenges he faced while building the ark. The text reveals the doubts and resistance of his family, the societal ridicule he endured, and his own moments of uncertainty. These struggles highlight the emotional weight of his task, making his eventual triumph not just an act of obedience, but a testament to perseverance and resilience. These depictions invite readers to embrace their own imperfections and struggles, viewing them not as barriers to faith but as integral parts of the spiritual journey. They underscore the idea that strength is found not in the absence of doubt, but in the courage to move forward despite it. Jasher also challenges traditional notions of justice and leadership, pushing readers to reevaluate their assumptions. For example, its account of the Tower of Babel expands on the brief narrative in Genesis, exploring the motivations of its builders and the dynamics of their rebellion. This deeper dive raises critical questions about ambition, unity, and the cost of defying divine authority. Was the Babel project a mere act of hubris, or was it a misguided attempt at progress and solidarity? Jasher's exploration forces us to confront these nuances, encouraging a more thoughtful engagement with the story. Similarly, the book's portrayal of Joshua adds new dimensions to his role as a leader. In canonical texts, Joshua is often seen as a figure of unwavering strength and divine favor. Jasher, however, reveals moments of self-doubt and hesitation, making his eventual victories all the more meaningful. This nuanced view of leadership resonates with modern audiences, reminding us that true leaders are not those who are without flaws, but those who rise above them to serve others. By preserving and studying texts like Jasher, we enrich our understanding of faith and spirituality. Canonical scriptures provide a foundation, but supplementary works like Jasher act as threads that weave a broader tapestry of human thought and experience. Together, they create a dynamic and evolving conversation that invites believers and seekers alike to engage with the divine in new and meaningful ways. Jasher's narratives emphasize that spiritual truths are not monolithic. They are layered, complex, and often contradictory, just like the human experience. This diversity of perspectives fosters empathy, encouraging readers to approach not just religious texts, but also one another with curiosity and openness. In a world increasingly divided along ideological lines, Jasher's message is particularly relevant. It challenges us to embrace nuance and complexity, to resist the temptation of dogmatic certainty, and to approach faith as an evolving journey rather than a fixed destination. These lessons are not confined to religion. They extend to every aspect of life, from interpersonal relationships to societal debates. The Book of Jasher reminds us that the search for truth is not a solitary endeavor, but a collective one, enriched by the voices and stories of others. By engaging with diverse perspectives, we gain a fuller understanding of the divine and of ourselves. In doing so, we honor not just the sacred texts of the past, but the living spirit of inquiry and growth that they inspire. In the end, Jasher's true value lies not in its historical accuracy or canonical status, but in its ability to provoke thought, spark dialogue, and deepen our connection to the sacred. It serves as a bridge between the ancient and the modern, the divine and the human, inviting us all to explore the mysteries of faith with an open mind and an open heart. The stories within the Book of Jasher are not simply ancient artifacts. They hold timeless lessons that echo profoundly in the modern world. In an age of technological leaps, political divides, and global uncertainty, Jasher's themes provide wisdom that is both strikingly relevant and deeply transformative. One of the most resonant lessons from Jasher is the importance of humility as we navigate progress. The tale of the Tower of Babel, as expanded in Jasher, illustrates the peril of unbridled ambition. The builders, driven by a desire to reach the heavens, prioritized their goals above moral considerations, leading to their downfall. This story mirrors contemporary issues such as the ethical dilemmas surrounding artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and climate change. As we push the boundaries of innovation, Jasher's warning is clear: progress without wisdom and humility invites disaster. It urges us to temper our ambitions with responsibility, considering the broader implications of our actions on society and the planet. In today's interconnected world, where decisions in one corner of the globe ripple outward, the cautionary message of Babel is critical. It reminds us that unity must serve a purpose higher than power or control. It must prioritize collective well-being and sustainability. Jasher's narratives emphasize that faith and perseverance go hand in hand. Figures like Noah, Abraham, and Joshua are portrayed not as infallible heroes, but as individuals grappling with doubt, fear, and overwhelming odds. Yet their resilience stands as a testament to the transformative power of persistence. Noah's struggles, particularly with the skepticism of his community and the emotional toll of preparing for the flood, resonate with anyone who has faced societal pressure or personal doubt. His unwavering commitment serves as a reminder that perseverance is often the key to achieving what seems impossible. Abraham's story offers a different perspective on resilience. His journey, marked by moments of negotiation with God, personal loss, and the moral quandary of sacrificing Isaac, highlights the courage required to maintain faith in the face of uncertainty. Jasher's depiction of these events makes them even more relatable, showing that inner strength is cultivated through struggle, not despite it. In a modern context, these lessons inspire us to embrace life's challenges as opportunities for growth. Whether dealing with personal setbacks or broader societal crises, Jasher's teachings encourage us to persist, adapt, and find meaning in our struggles. Jasher's portrayal of leadership goes beyond authority, focusing instead on service, empathy, and shared responsibility. This is evident in the dynamics of Noah's family, Abraham's intercessions, and Joshua's moments of self-doubt. Noah's story sheds light on the complexities of family and communal relationships, as he navigates the logistical and emotional challenges of building the ark. His experience highlights the importance of communication and mutual understanding. Today, as we face global challenges that demand collective action, such as climate change and social inequality, this emphasis on collaboration is more relevant than ever. Abraham's interactions with God reveal another vital lesson: the power of dialogue. In negotiating for the lives of the people in Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham demonstrates that leadership often involves standing up for others, even in the face of divine authority. This idea of advocacy and moral courage is particularly significant in our polarized world, where leaders are often called upon to mediate, unite, and protect the vulnerable. Joshua's journey, as depicted in Jasher, brings leadership's internal struggles into focus. His doubts and hesitations humanize him, reminding us that effective leaders are not those without flaws, but those who learn and grow from their vulnerabilities. In an era where authenticity and emotional intelligence are increasingly valued in leadership, Joshua's story serves as a timeless example. Jasher's teachings challenge us to rethink our approach to modern life. They encourage us to embrace the complexity of human experience, to approach challenges with courage and humility, and to foster empathy in our interactions. For instance, Jasher's exploration of moral dilemmas, whether in the defiance of Babel's builders, Noah's unwavering faith, or Abraham's ethical negotiations, reminds us that life is rarely black and white. The text invites us to engage with nuance, to question rigid beliefs, and to find wisdom in diverse perspectives. In today's fast-paced world, Jasher also calls for reflection. Its stories emphasize the value of slowing down, of contemplating our actions, and of connecting with the deeper truths that guide us. As we navigate an era defined by rapid change, Jasher's timeless wisdom offers a steadying force, encouraging us to ground our progress in purpose, compassion, and faith. Ultimately, the Book of Jasher invites us to see life as a tapestry of interconnected struggles, triumphs, and lessons. By drawing parallels between its ancient teachings and the challenges of the present, we find guidance for navigating uncertainty and hope, for building a more compassionate and thoughtful future. In embracing the wisdom of Jasher, we honor not only the text itself, but also the enduring human quest for understanding and growth. The Book of Jasher's journey from obscurity to modern intrigue reveals profound truths about history, knowledge, and power. Hidden histories like Jasher's remind us that the narratives we accept as truth are often curated by those in authority, leaving alternative perspectives unheard. Jasher's exclusion from the biblical canon is more than an academic curiosity. It's a window into the forces that decide which stories endure and which are forgotten. This realization is both humbling and empowering. It challenges us to question the stories we've been told and encourages us to uncover the voices that history has silenced. Whether we're examining ancient texts, reevaluating historical events, or engaging with marginalized perspectives today, we tap into a richer, more inclusive understanding of human experience. In doing so, we not only connect with the past, but also gain insights that resonate deeply in the present. Jasher's rediscovery and the debates about its authenticity serve as a powerful reminder of the value of curiosity. The text's alternative takes on well-known biblical events. Its expanded stories and unique interpretations challenge us to look beyond established norms and consider new possibilities. By daring to explore these hidden perspectives, we cultivate a mindset of openness and intellectual humility. In a world overflowing with information, where opinions are abundant but often polarized, Jasher's legacy underscores the importance of discernment. Truth is rarely simple or singular. Instead, it's layered, complex, and multifaceted. Jasher's narratives invite us to embrace this complexity, to seek understanding not just in black and white answers, but in the shades of gray that define human history and spirituality. Jasher's enduring relevance lies in its ability to inspire reflection. It calls us to confront our assumptions, to approach faith and history with a sense of wonder, and to acknowledge the limits of our understanding. This approach is particularly important in a world where rapid advancements and societal shifts often outpace our ability to process them thoughtfully. Moreover, Jasher's stories serve as a reminder of the hidden histories in our own lives. They encourage us to preserve and explore diverse perspectives, ensuring that no voice is lost to the sands of time. This principle extends beyond religion and history, touching every aspect of how we interact with others, make decisions, and understand the world around us. Ultimately, the Book of Jasher is more than an ancient text. It's a symbol of humanity's unyielding quest for truth and meaning. Its rediscovery speaks to the enduring value of curiosity, reflection, and dialogue. By engaging with Jasher, we honor the spirit of inquiry that has shaped human thought for millennia. In embracing hidden histories like Jasher's, we don't just uncover forgotten stories. We uncover parts of ourselves, discovering new ways to connect, grow, and find purpose in an ever-changing world. As we reach the end of this fascinating exploration into the Book of Jasher, the journey doesn't have to stop here. This is your opportunity to become part of the conversation, an ongoing dialogue about history, faith, and the untold stories that shape our understanding of the world. What's your take on the Book of Jasher? Was it truly dangerous, a text so provocative that it had to be silenced? Or was it merely a victim of historical oversight, swept aside as religious authorities curated the canon? Perhaps it was neither, a misunderstood narrative that simply didn't fit the theological or political agenda of its time. Theories abound, and now it's your turn to weigh in. The comments section is your platform to share your thoughts and interpretations. What moments in Jasher's narrative do you find most compelling? Do you believe it holds secrets that challenge traditional biblical narratives, or do you see it as an enriching supplement to the stories we already know? If you're intrigued by specific details, like Jasher's expanded portrayal of the patriarchs or its bold retelling of the Tower of Babel, don't hesitate to dive into those aspects. The beauty of discussing texts like Jasher lies in the variety of perspectives they inspire.